Welcome to Two Grandpas Talking Tech. I'm your host, Grandpa Greg.
And I'm your host, Jay Benjamin, and this is my favorite episode so far.
Nice, because you're also known to your grandkids as
iPad Grandpa.
iPad Grandpa.
It's the only time they get to see me.
We are going to talk about the iPad today. And again, we've got other episodes that are going to go into depth about who we are, what we're doing, all that kind of fun stuff. But for these first episodes, we're doing a deep dive into the state of Apple. Today, we recorded iPhone. That one should already be out. We recorded Mac. We'll also go on to talk about the Apple Watch, AirPods, and then we'll dive into kind of the rest of Apple stuff, HomePods and accessories and a bunch of those kinds of things. So if you're interested in the other topics, check those out. You should hit subscribe anyway, because our goal is to do more of these deep dive series. For today, let's dive into Jason's absolute favorite topic, which is the iPad. And you're going to know by the end of this which iPad is his favorite for sure. Jason, I think it's time to talk about, if I had to pick one category that we were both like, it's number one or number two for both of us, I think this would be the category.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely my number one. And the strange thing too, I mean, not strange, but I think both of us have different opinions about which iPad is the best. But definitely that the iPad category is probably the best category to be in. Even though different models, we have a different opinions about which model is the best. But yeah, definitely my favorite.
So yeah, we're going to talk about iPad now. And again, we don't quite know what order we're releasing these in, which ones we're going to mix and match. But we know that iPhone, we just wrapped up doing Mac and iPhone. They both ran a little bit long. And since this is probably our overall favorite, I don't know if we'll just breeze through it because we're the most comfortable with it, or we'll end up having way more to say about this one than all of the others. But putting aside how much I need to use my phone for communication and photography and stuff, my daily driver iPad is the device I use the most. And I know that's the case for you, because you even went through a period of time where you didn't have a phone. You wanted to use the iPad. So we're going to have lots, I think, to say about defaults and who should use them for use cases and buying advice and all that kind of stuff. But Jason, like everything else, do you want to give us a rundown? This is actually a pretty simple lineup compared to all of the other iPad.
It is. And it's pretty straightforward because there's a device and a screen size for everyone, right? So it's kind of pretty clear cut, like you know which device you'll need. So starting right out of the gate, entry level is the iPad. And this is generation, I forget which generation they're on. It's so many, but this is just straightforward. They're 10-inch a tablet, and they call it the iPad, even though they're on 13, I believe.
Yeah, so it's actually 11 inches now. It's actually gone up a little bit, so it is an 11. Right. Yep.
More screen, more screen, and that is what made this whole product line popular, is just that iPad. Everybody loves, and we talked before in G4F, when products become synonymous with that name, right? The Sony Walkman, even though they had a different brand, whether it was from a different company or something, they still call it a Walkman, right? How many different MP3 players were out? Every company, every brand had one, yet they were all called iPods. So it's sort of the same with a tablet. Even if it's a, cheap little Android tablet, they just kind of get stuck with the name iPad. So entry-level iPad is the name for a tablet nowadays. So, and then let's follow up with the Air. And the Air is, you remember when the Air came out, it was just like the MacBook Air. It was a thinner and lighter version of it. So while that's not necessarily the case now, it still is a more portable, more feature-packed version of the iPad without a heavy price range tag to it, right? So it's not quite a Pro. It has more advanced features, more advanced technology in it. So I'm gonna say that that's probably the mid-range is the iPad Air. Then you have your iPad Mini. Now these are for guys like Greg who hand it big enough to hold it like a phone and stick it in. I remember we used to be on your way to a meeting. You would just grab your mini and stick it in your coat pocket. Yeah. I love it. It was always so cool. Now, it was always too small for me. It was good for playing some games and stuff like that, but we have some specific use cases that you use it for, reading and stuff like that, showering with it. We'll see if
Yeah.
Greg, if time for Greg to tell us the story of his Aqua iPad Mini. But, really, it's for people looking for that portability of an iPad. They still need a bigger screen, bigger than what their phone offers. It has good power to it, right? Good processor in it, different size storage and all of that. So, it's a smaller version, a more portable version of iPad, the iPad Air. And then last but not least is, of course, my favorite, and that's the iPad Pro. And the last 2 versions of this iPad, the iPad Pro, have been pretty great, right? I remember the original iPad Pro was not much better than the iPad. Then the next version, next generation came out, and they started getting further and further apart. But I would say the last 2 generations of the iPad Pro have been such a huge leap over the entry level iPad that it earned the name Pro, right? It actually was a pro level device. And a lot of that had to do with the version of iOS or iPad OS that they put on it, which really set it aside because there was a point where there was what 2 generations where they were calling it a Pro, but you can do much more on it than you can do already on your regular iPad. So now the iPad Pro is finally a Pro with iOS 26 on it and the multitasking features and things like that. So, but yeah, there you have it. Those are your four: the iPad Air, the iPad Mini, and the iPad Pro. So not
Yeah.
a crowded lineup, and I believe there's something for everybody. So what
Yeah.
do you think?
I agree. So the one video I sent you last night from 9 to 5 Mac was comparing the iPad Air to the MacBook Neo. And he
The
specifically called out that he was doing the Air because the iPad Pro is a whole other beast, right? And it really
Right.
is. The person that was doing it, I can't remember his name, but his main driver computer is an iPad Pro. So with all the work that he does.
Right.
So, but yeah, I love the lineup. I do think there's something in it for everyone, and we'll talk about who should get which one. And I think in this case, the default is actually a little more straightforward, but anyway, we can get into that. So you've
Yeah.
already talked about
Yeah.
your favorite is the Pro. That's the one that stands out the most to me. A lot of it's what they've
Yeah.
done with the software, but also the power of the chip. For a little while in my last job, I was doing all of my work on my iPad because they gave me
Yeah.
access to plenty of stuff to be able to do that. And they were a Microsoft shop, and I had access to all the apps and all of those kinds of things. So, and it was more than capable. Um, of doing it, there was just some friction, right? That you had to figure out how
Yeah.
to work through and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I agree with you. Great lineup. The one that stands out is the Pro. It is um, my favorite iPad, and so my daily driver is um, the 13-inch iPad Pro. I've got the M4, so that was the last generation of
Yes.
iPad, not the most recent one. And I will say that I have been tempted to upgrade to the new one because I almost as bad as the phone
Same
with the
here.
camera, right? It's almost the same thing where I want whatever the latest and greatest is. But I've got the 512 SSD. I do have the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil Pro. You have to clarify which Apple Pencil you have nowadays. I do have the Apple Pencil Pro,
Yeah.
and then I also have an iPad mini, and both of my iPads get used on a daily basis. And if I am going on a trip that I'm not trying to consolidate, like my last vacation trip, but like if I'm going up to my sister's to do some work, or like I've got a video shoot,
Hmm.
we're doing a wedding coming up, um, my Mac goes because I want that, but also
Yeah.
my Pro and my Mini all go in the backpack as well. So, Jason, what is your daily driver? I know what it is, but I don't know all the details. But if I remember right, somebody may have splurged when they bought their last iPad Pro.
I did. And the whole thought when I bought it was I was going to upgrade into a new form factor, right? I like to get the newest, the latest screen, the new bezel, all of that, the new shape and everything. So, like you, I'm tempted to jump into the M5, but no, I went ahead and got the 1 terabyte version with I didn't get the screen. What was that? The laminated matte finish that they put on it. I didn't get that. I didn't really see a need for it. I don't draw and stuff on my iPad like you do. But yeah, I went with the 1 terabyte version. It had the additional RAM and stuff in it. And yeah, I I'm happy with it. It is not just my daily driver, it is my main PC that I do everything with, right? I know people listening, they'll probably say, well, how can somebody use an iPad only, like without having to use a PC or use a MacBook or use some kind of other device? And, I'll just be honest, it's taken years of building my entire ecosystem around the iPad, right? This is not something that I just jumped into. It's not something that would take somebody years if they wanted to do it, right? But it would take some buying different types of tech in their house, right? I use a NAS, network storage here in the home. I've learned how to do different tasks and stuff with a combination of apps and using web apps through Safari or the Chrome browser and stuff like that. So you really have to change the way your workflow goes to be able to use it. But with enough work, you can do it. You can really be like we mentioned in the last segment. If I didn't have to use a Mac, I wouldn't use it at all. And I found myself not going months without having to use it. Greg does editing and stuff like that. And the photography stuff is going to require a Mac, to get the job done. Seriously, I would really, really just figure out a way to do it. Also,
Yeah.
and
I think
also have
that's
the
a good
magic keyboard.
No, I think that's a good point, right? Is that if you've got a Mac and an iPad today, you're not going to give your Mac up now and have smooth sailing and just try and do everything on
Right.
your iPad. You do want to hold on to that Mac until you know how you're going to get everything done on the iPad. Like I could do DaVinci Resolve, but I'd want to do a whole bunch of testing to make sure it wasn't going to drive me
Yeah.
crazy. Right. And so I
Yeah.
could do all of those kinds of things. The other thing is the browser. Chrome and Safari don't behave exactly the same on a Mac versus on
They
your
don't.
iPad. So if you've got intense services
Yeah.
that depend on a browser, you want to test those kinds of things. And so I think it is possible to move over to an iPad Pro only computer for 80% of people, but not just by
Right.
flipping a switch. You've got to go through and kind of have both resources available to you until you get comfortable that you're where you're going to need to. And the
Yes.
good news is this last bump in iPad OS was a major leap forward in functionality. They put in podcast
Yes.
functionality. They fixed multitasking. It was a major leap forward as far as professional use case and professional workflows go. So if they can keep that up, I have hope for the future that eventually I won't need my Mac, but I wouldn't just like if I was going on a 3 week, do 3 weddings and 6 graduations and need to edit all of those and produce the footage and do all of that kind of stuff. I am not just taking my
Yeah.
iPad right now.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's definitely not an overnight process. And, one of the perfect examples I can give of that is while apps are great, I really don't use too many iPad apps or iPad OS apps, right? I would just use the web version of there's an Amazon app, just doesn't look as good. So I just open up Safari and I go and do my shopping on Safari, Canva. The Canva app, while it's great, it probably works best for a lot of people. When you're making videos and stuff in Canva, it just works better in the browser. So a lot of it is having to change the way you do things. Whereas if I were doing it on the phone, it'll just be straight apps, right? Safari is the least used app that I use on the phone and probably the most used app I use on the iPad. So definitely not an overnight process, but changing the way you do things and just adjusting to it. And like I said, I've been doing this for years. iPad has been my only device for years now. So it's not an overnight process, but it is something that can be done if you're looking to going down that route. So yeah, don't count the iPad Pro out. It is still a device that most people can get their daily use out of.
Especially when you pair it with keyboard, mouse, trackpad, pencil, and you can go out to an external monitor on it, right? So, do you have
right?
what are the accessories that you have with your iPad Pro?
So I do have the Magic Keyboard, and Greg kind of peer pressured me into doing this because I was seriously the guy that I'm going to go on Amazon and I'm going to spend $40 for a knockoff import case. And Greg would always tell me, like, just the functionality alone, just the way the smart connector and everything works, like, just spend the money and get the keyboard. And I always thought they were overpriced. I still do. I still think that one of Apple's most overpriced devices is the Magic Keyboard. I just do. I just think that for what it does, it's a keyboard, right? But I'm glad I made the leap. I'm glad I didn't go with ESR or any of those other. Even though those are great, I'm not discounting those. If you guys get your hands on one and you like it, then it's great. But having a smart connector and the backlit keyboard and just the way the touchpad and stuff functions, it's great, man. It's great. So I do
Yeah.
have the Magic Keyboard. I have the 13-inch iPad too, by the way, the Pro, by the way. And I would, if they come out with a 15-inch one, I'm going to go with the 15-inch one. The bigger the better for me. I also have a Magic mouse, which since the last time we recorded, Greg and I think the battery got too low and it won't take a charge, or maybe the battery is damaged, but I have to do some troubleshooting step on it. But this is another awesome accessory because while the keyboard and touchpad is great for when you're working, if you're doing something where you're just scrolling through the internet, you're just browsing through YouTube or Facebook or social media or something, having this touchpad on here and having the mouse on the screen, it's another awesome accessory that I would recommend anyone
Yeah.
getting. So, and this is a Magic, they don't make it specifically for the iPad. This is a Magic Mouse for the MacBook
Yep.
and the iMac and the Studio and all of that. But it just is Apple and it just works perfectly with the iPad Pro. So, and another accessory that I have, Greg mentioned his Apple Pencil. I think that it's overpriced for what it does and for the use I would get out of it. And I find myself perfectly fine with my $14 ESR knockoff Apple Pencil from Amazon. And I think for most people, it'll be the same, right? Especially if you're buying them for younger kids, because my daughter and I share, she's 10 and she's been through maybe three iPads. I mean, Apple Pencils already. And at $14 or $11 whenever they're on sale, you catch a little prime deal or something like that. That is a lot better than her destroying $100, Apple Pencil. So,
Yeah.
so we put that out and it worked fine. And I think it's great. So other accessories I have outside of chargers and things like that.
I recently bought 3 cheap Apple Pencils, one for each of my grandkids, and they're super
Right.
cheap, but for them, when they're just coloring or drawing on their iPads, they're fine.
Yeah. And I don't know if any of the ones you bought, but they come with replacement tips too. So you at least get 3 tips. So if they don't break the pencil, you can
Yeah.
replace the tip on it and it'll be fine. Yeah. So, and then chargers and stuff like that. And like Greg mentioned, external stuff, the microphone that I record with a Blue Yeti, and you can hook an external webcam up to it too if you want. I'm recording on my iPhone now, but it's just as possible to hook a webcam to it. The quality won't be as good, but something to consider if you don't have a phone or if you need to do some video chatting and the built-in camera is not enough for you and stuff like that. So yeah, way more capable than it's been. It's finally earning, if not earned, the name Pro. But yeah, a daily driver. So
So, we got our daily drivers, talked a lot about accessories, default purchase. Jason, why don't you go first on this one?
yeah. So like I said, the default purchase should be the iPad. Hands down, it is gonna do everything that most devices can do except for the Pro, right? The Mini, unless you need that form factor, the smaller screen, there's reason to choose the Mini over the Pro. Same with the Air, unless there's a few cases we'll get to that in a minute. Like I said, the name that's synonymous with tablets is the iPad. That entry level iPad is going to do it for 98.5% of the people looking for a tablet. Go with the iPad, and Um, the price right now is really good. This last generation that they came out with, I think they lowered it by what, $50 or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Perfect price, perfect for everyone. What do you think?
I agree. We'll talk about it in a minute, but the Air and the others, but that iPad is just solid. I needed to replace
Yeah,
one for one of my kids. Karen had an older iPad Pro that she just didn't need. So when I bought my iPad Pro, I bought two regular iPads as well. And they come in colors, and Karen got her
yeah,
yellow that was close to a green, and my granddaughter got a pink, and everybody was happy, and they're rock solid. So, yeah, if you want an iPad, unless you know you need something different, just get the regular iPad and spec it the way you need it and move on.
yeah, yeah. And you'll be happy with it. You'll be happy
Oh,
with
yeah,
it. Although I did
absolutely.
buy my granddaughter the pink one and left it up to my son and my daughter-in-law to buy a case, and they have a big rubber. She needs it because she's gonna destroy it. But I just
Yep.
wanted them to go with a more girly like case, not Smurfette because that's blue, Minnie Mouse, or something like that.
Yeah.
Big black rubber, big rubber edges on it and all that. So it defeated the purpose of getting a pink one, but until she's older, they just can't do the clear cases or the rubber bumpers and stuff like that. So
Yeah. My granddaughter's is pink, and the case has a butterfly for the stand in the back. So the wings open.
uh,
And
I've seen those.
has
Yep.
the pinks and stuff. So yeah, she absolutely loves it. So if iPad is the default, I don't know why you would buy the Air. So Jason, do you have any idea what the use case would be to not go from the iPad to the Pro? I mean, other than price, there's a $700 price
Right.
difference, but what do you really get in the Air? What's the use case for the Air?
So, and I think where the problem or the confusion is going to come in is if you're comparing the Air to the iPad, right? That's where it's going to be harder to make that decision. I think it'll be easier to make the decision if you consider whether or not you need the Pro. And you say, well, I need the Pro, but I don't need that price tag. I don't need all of these features. I don't need the powerful processor. I don't need, the external monitors, the support, which I believe this one has. I believe the Air has external monitor support. But I think when
Yeah,
you
it's running
compare
the
the Pro and the
M4.
Air,
It's running the M4
yeah,
processor right now, and the Pro runs the M5. So yeah, it should be capable of doing that.
yeah, yeah, it should. So, but I think when you make that comparison to the Pro and this one, I think it makes the Air a more attractive buy, right? So, like I said, 98%, 98.5% of the people are going to need a regular iPad. Only the pros are going to be considering the Air or the Pro. And I think when you consider the features that the Pro has, and you say, well, I don't really need this, I don't really need X, Y, and Z, then that's where the Air becomes more attractive because you get a fully capable, far more powerful iPad than anything that's out there, except for the Pro. Then you get those, we complain about the colors, but to be honest, I think the color selection is better on the iPad, including the pink one. But yeah, when you make that comparison between the iPad and the Air, you can't really make any kind of really realistic justifications to going with the Air. But if you're looking to you're running a small business, you're running a little side hustle, you're doing some photography, you want to start kind of creating some content and stuff on social media, whether that be a podcast or video, you want to start recording sessions with your instrument, stuff like that. The iPad Air is going to get you through with a more reasonable price range. I think. I mean, that's just my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, that makes sense. I just struggle with that. I mean, it does have a better screen, so if you're using it as a
Yes,
media consumption device, right? But that's really what you want because it's got True Tone and it's got the P3. It's got, where was the other part? There was another thing down here that I saw, anti-reflective coating. So if you're going to do that, but you don't want to jump clear up to the price tag of the Pro, because again, it's a big price difference, right? You're talking a
it is.
$700 price difference between the entry level Air and the Pro, not to mention the size difference because you're going from 11 to 13. So I think that makes sense. I just think I struggle with it because I have opposite ends of needs for the iPad in
Yes.
my life. I have everybody else that just needs the regular iPad, and then me who's never going to go back from that.
Yeah. So let's break it down for somebody though. Do people really need the camera on their iPad, right? Most people, including me, I rarely even use the camera on my the front facing camera is different, right? And you get both with both devices, with both the entry level iPad, the A16 and the Air. But do you need
Well,
ProRes, right?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, do
Stuff
you
like that.
really?
That's in the Pro. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think so. So if you don't need it, then yeah, where the Air, that's why I say that comparing it to the iPad is not really a big deal, but comparing it to the
yeah,
iPad Pro is where you see the benefits because the Thunderbolt support, you're not using any external devices and stuff like that. That makes the Air more attractive over the Pro. Do you need Face ID? I think so. I think the newest Air should have had Face ID, but I can see what makes that a pro feature and makes the iPad Pro more attractive buy. But if you don't need Face ID, if you're coming from an older iPhone and you're still using Touch ID or not using anything at all, then Touch ID is going to work perfectly for you, right?
yeah.
So again, the price range again is going to make that a big deal. I think that was it, right?
So let
Specific
me see if I
keyboard.
can kind of summarize this, right? So if you want an iPad for consumption, light work, maybe a little more medium work, but you just
Hmm.
can't, but you want the size because you can do the 11, right?
Right.
11 versus 13. There is a 13-inch Air, so you could get the bigger one too if you wanted. But if you want the smaller one
Yeah.
and you just don't want the $700 price tag difference, then that's where you fall into the Air because you're going to get what you get with the iPad.
Yes.
My grandkids are not going to know the difference between the nicer display on the Air versus the display on the iPad, and it doesn't matter what they're watching. It's just not going to
Yeah.
make a difference. I would see it immediately, but I'm not the
Yes.
audience for either of those devices.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I'm with you on that. Sometimes and again back to I keep mentioning that horror story with using that Windows PC. That was a crazy experience. And just looking at the screen, right? You got two browsers open. I have my iPad right there and I'm doing the application in that and just it was almost uncomfortable to look at the it was uncomfortable looking at. That was an older laptop. It is an older Dell PC laptop, but yeah. But back to the Air. Yeah, if it's a trade-off, right? There's so many features that aren't included in the Pro, but if you can live without those features, then the Air is perfect for you.
yeah.
It is a perfect device.
All right. Our next one is the mini. So portability, but reading and media consumption. If you don't care about watching videos on a giant screen, right? Those are the
Right.
biggest things. I just read a ton. I've got 3 or 4 apps that I read out of. I think I'm reading 3 or 4 different books right now because I'm on a reading kick. So I don't spend so much time scrolling social media and YouTube. So that's the thing. But you have to be willing to pay the price because the entry on the iPad mini is $400. Or
Yeah.
$500, sorry. It's $499 and it's not as nice as everything else. It's got a
Yeah.
A17 Pro. That's the newest one. Mine doesn't. But it just doesn't have all of the stuff that I would like it to have. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would
And
like it to
well,
have the much better. I'd like it to have the same display as the tandem OLED display that the iPad has, just because it's so phenomenal for what it does. But I
right.
just don't see it coming to that small device.
So let's a little sidebar real quick and do something. And I'm not justifying anything for Apple, right? We're fanboys as they call us or whatever, but we also call Apple out when they do things that are not right or we feel that aren't right. So don't think that we're all just sunshine and roses when it comes to Apple. But I will say when it comes to the iPad mini, it has always been a different device, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know people always, because I was even that same way in the beginning. Well, why don't they just take the bigger device and just shrink it down? That's not what the iPad mini is. I mean, yes, it's an iPad, but they're not just taking everything that they do on a bigger iPad and just shrinking it down. This thing has to be reworked almost to, like I said, a different device. It is an iPad, but the technology and stuff that they put in it, they can't just take all of their old stock from the original iPad or chips and stuff, maybe, but everything from the ribbon cables to the video, the display and all of that has to be re-engineered in a smaller size to fit in that form factor. So it's not so much of just taking everything and just making it smaller. That's
Yeah.
not what the iPad mini is. The iPad mini is an actual different device. It's just an iPad. So, sort of like the Pro, while some arguments can be made, well, some parts are interchangeable with the iPad, right?
Yep.
I don't believe there's anything that they can take out of the iPad, the regular iPad or the Air, and fit it into the Mini, right? The Mini has to be reworked. And that seems to be the reason why it's ignored year after year, right? Now, it has an A17 chip in it or the Pro chip in it,
Yeah.
but it's not just it can't get an A4 process or I'm sorry, an M4 processor or a pro version of the mini or something like that. It really takes some R&D on.
But the other thing is, if you want an iPad mini, odds are you've bought another iPad too. So this is your second iPad,
Mhm.
right? Odds are this is not your only iPad. It's not the only iPad you're gonna buy. So you're talking about a secondary device for most people that have it. And if they did rework all of it and make it basically the iPad Pro in a smaller form factor, it's probably going to cost $1,000. So do you really want to be spending $2,000 for your iPad Pro, $1,500 for your iPhone Pro, and another $1,000 for your Mini Pro? There's just not a big audience for that item.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
there's no.
but I still love it.
Yeah. Yeah, you've always had one. You've always had one even when you say you're not going to buy one, you still
Yep,
buy it anyway.
I know. I did not upgrade to the 17 Pro one, so mine's a little older than that, but yeah. So,
Right, right.
and then I think we've talked a lot about the Pro and the use cases for the Pro, right? I mean, you can
Right.
do real work on the Pro. Is there anything else you want to talk about the use case for why you would want to go from the iPad up to the Pro that we haven't already covered?
No, no, definitely if it's your only device, like we mentioned with the phone and the MacBook, if it's going to be your only device, you're not going to have a MacBook, you're not going to have a laptop or any kind. You may want to consider the Pro if it's within your price range. If you're going to be doing multiple tasks at once. So a lot of people only want a tablet for scrolling through something, scrolling through Facebook, scrolling through YouTube or something like that. Single use case, then you won't need it. But if you know that you're gonna have to have a spreadsheet and an email and doing something at one time, even though the screen is not great for that, you can still resize the window. So if you know you need to multitask, even though you can multitask on the Air and the iPad too, it's just more powerful, right? With the chip that's in it. External monitor support. If you know you need an external monitor, which I do, I'm going to figure something out with that too. Things like that, external devices and stuff. Then that's when you want to start considering the Pro, right? If you're side hustle, small business, even school, things like that. Yeah, there's plenty of use cases for the Pro. And while the price range is way more than the other iPads, what you get for that value, I think, is justification enough to say, I'm going to jump right into the Pro.
So some buying advice stuff. I was actually just doing this. If I'm buying the iPad, you know, get whatever size you think you need to have. If you're going to have kids, you're going to go on road trips with them, make sure you get enough space to store the movies. That's the only thing on an iPad that's really going to consume a lot of space, right? Is the media if you're going to
Hmm.
store a bunch of video in particular. So if
Yeah.
you want to have gigs of Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and Paramount and all of those downloaded on that. So do your storage wisely. For the mini and the Air, the mini, the Air, and the iPad, I think that's really the biggest consideration, other than screen size and then a color that you want to choose. But I want to talk for just a minute about the iPad Pro. So if I were to buy an iPad Pro today, I would more than likely buy at least the 1 terabyte for a couple of reasons. If I'm
Hmm.
going to do DaVinci Resolve, I would want the 16 gigabytes of memory, even though 12 might be okay, which is what comes with the 256 and the 512. But I think I would want the 1 terabyte. I also think I would go with the nano texture glass. That one's a little controversial, but I think I would do that just so that I could be in a park or whatever, right? And not have to worry. I used one of those magnetic screen protectors. They're fine, but they
Right.
die quickly, even though you can take them off and
Mm.
put them back on, and they distort it just enough. So I think I would probably go with the nano texture. The other thing that I would do, especially if this is going to be your primary computer, I would get it with cellular. Tethering is
Yeah.
fine. I know you tether a ton. You can do that kind of stuff. But if
Hmm.
this is what you're going to use to get your work done, I would just get the cellular. Then you don't have to worry about it. I'd probably recommend, even though it's a little more expensive, probably recommend getting the cellular connection with a different carrier than what your phone is on, so that you have redundant connections.
Yeah.
Um, if you're
Yes.
starting to talk about doing that, so if I price that out, I'm looking at wouldn't have to buy the keyboard or the pencil, so it's $2,200. If you buy the Pencil Pro, that's another 130. If you buy the keyboard, that's another 350. Right. So it'll add up. I mean, so if I had to buy all of those pieces, then just trying to confirm. Don't make it easy to do this. English, black,
Yeah.
confirm. So I'm looking at $2,700 for all of that.
Most people would hear that and be like, wow, wow, for an iPad. Now, remember, like we said, the iPad and the iPad Pro are two different animals. So the iPad Pro it's actually earning the name Pro. And this is a pro level prosumer device. So you would know if you need it, but yeah,
Yeah.
people will hear that and be like, wow, that is too much. So, but for the tech that you get, and also too, Greg, one thing you didn't mention, you get an extra core in the CPU to upgrade into the 1 terabyte model. So it is a
Yep.
little bit faster, a little bit snappier, which doesn't matter for most people, but to diehard techies and stuff like that, you feel the difference. You'll feel the difference in that. Even though we're talking just one core, and you're like, oh, what difference will one core make? It does, and it affects the battery differently too. So
Yeah.
yeah, for the technology that's included, it's worth it.
Yep. And I, to a certain extent, wonder if I had that device, because it's also a processor upgrade for me, right? I'm going from the 4 to the 5. So if I had that
Right.
device, how snappy DaVinci Resolve. So you test the Neo, I'll consider. I'm not buying it right now. I can't put out $2,800 or whatever it is. Your test is a little more inexpensive than what my test would be,
Right.
but I'm gonna do some testing on my iPad to see what it's like to edit some of our stuff or some of my travel video, right? Using it and see if
Yeah.
it is, because I would really like to get there. And that leads into, what are we looking forward to? I really hope that we see another leap in iPad OS this year that maybe removes some of the
Yeah.
restrictions in the browser and some of those kinds of things, because I would really,
Yes.
really, 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 really like to not need my Mac and do it all on an iPad. If I could sell this Mac and trade in my iPad I would max out an iPad Pro if it would do everything that I really need it to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, you actually stole it. I know I couldn't include my notes in there, but you actually stole one of my things that I'm looking forward to, and that is I want Safari to be Mac OS level Safari in iPad OS, right? You already did all of the background tweaks and stuff, and you made the operating system more powerful. But man, I still get crashes trying to do certain things. I mentioned earlier that I use a combination of Safari and Chrome, and even Chrome is not as good on iPad OS. So I want some significant browser improvements on the security stuff is cool. It did with all of the background. It does a good job of warning me protecting me while I'm out there, giving me the option to be able to, handle cookies and stuff and things like that. But browser extensions, they added that and stuff. And while all of that is cool, we're still talking about a mobile browser, mobile
Yeah.
operating system. And you were talking on a pro device. I want a full Safari experience. You have to figure out a way to port that Safari browser from Mac OS into iPad OS and stop all of these crashes and these just not loading the page, compatibility issues. I have to do taxes. And yes, I mentioned taxes again. I have to do that in Safari because the Texas controller site is not compatible. All of that stuff, I just hate to have to go with other companies for, right?
Yeah.
Apple, just give it to us on the iPad. But while we're talking about the stuff we're looking forward to, like I mentioned earlier, a bigger screen. A 15-inch iPad has been rumored.
Mm.
That rumor's been kicking around for a few years already, and I'm ready for it. I was ready for a 13-inch. I'm ready for a 15-inch. What do you think? Still too big for you?
If I could get rid of my Mac, I would. Right? I
Right,
think I would go
right.
up because I've got the 14-inch Mac and it's just a little bit bigger than the iPad, so it's just a little more real estate and it works fine. But if I didn't need my Mac, I'd be willing to go with the bigger one because I'd still have my mini, right, or my foldable iPhone
Yeah,
floating along with me. So, but I think I'd have to be able to get rid of my Mac in order for me to justify that.
yeah, yeah. So, um, you don't really need external support, right? You're not really hooking much to the iPad,
I mean, you can
right?
hook a
Like I mentioned, the webcam and the microphone and stuff like that. But can you think of anything else you would need
I mean, I don't hook
externally?
anything. I mean, I've got my continuity camera I'm running through the cable right now. I didn't do wireless this time. And I've got my microphone
Okay,
plugged
yeah,
in, but
yeah,
both of those things would work with a USB hub on the iPad Pro too. So there's nothing that I do right now that I couldn't do on the iPad Pro as far as IO or accessories or anything goes. Not that I'm aware of. So
right, right. I guess I hadn't really tried continuity cam. Well,
you'd have to have a
we use
Mac. It
Riverside
doesn't work on
anyway,
the
so
iPad,
yeah.
but it doesn't work on the iPad.
So
So
I'm thinking I would want to see some of that,
yeah.
some better communication with continuity cam between the iPad and the phones. Now they made some really cool with the phone feature and stuff like that for the iPad, but yeah, I think some improvements like that, which I think iOS 27 or iPad OS 27 would probably do anyway, just as a new feature
Yeah.
set.
Yep. All right, Jason, any last thoughts on your beloved iPad?
No, no, just I can't stress enough. I know people here, that they go iPad only, but that's not an overnight journey, but it's definitely something that can be done. So if you're looking to getting into that and figuring out how to do different things and how to do more on your iPad, then subscribe to us. Subscribe to us. This is the perfect
Yep.
place to be. We're going to give you some real life use cases on how to get some of these tasks done with the technology that you have. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's all I had on the iPad.
My only other thing was if you don't have an iPad, buy one. As long as you can afford it. Don't go into debt
Yeah,
for it, but it's definitely a device worth having.
yeah,
Of everything that I would say the first extra I would ever buy would be the iPad over most
yeah,
anything else. So all right. Well, that does
yeah,
it for our iPad segment. I think we agreed, right, that the default iPad is the regular iPad. The lineup is solid. We've talked about who should buy what, and I think we're good on the iPad. We love it. It's our favorite overall category to talk about. If you're listening to this and haven't checked out what we've done on iPhone or Mac, or we still haven't recorded, but we will be recording on AirPods and Apple Watch and then kind of lumping everything else that Apple has together, check out those episodes, hit subscribe, drop in the comments, and we look forward to catching you on the next video. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.